Regarding the selection process for children that go to charter schools, we've been told charter schools are only for the elitists, the wealthy, that want to get their kids out of these failing school systems. And it's set up by the Republicans to just benefit the wealthier. My understanding is that it's totally random and that minorities are some of the strongest supporters of the charter schools. Can you address the selection process as far as how schools or children are selected to get out of a failing public school or any school to go to a charter school?
The selection process is simply this: parental choice. Parents make a decision that they want to take their child somewhere differently. There's only so many seats that a charter school has. Could be 300, could be 400, could be 500 seats. As many people that would like to fill out the paperwork to have their kid enrolled at that public charter school, there's not going to be anyone standing there saying, no, not you, no, we can take you, and we can take you, but no, not you. Whosoever will, let them come. The public charter school will receive their application, process that application, and open their arms to that student who wants to step it up a notch for that learning environment. It is so disingenuous for people to make an argument that charter schools cherry pick or we discriminate, or there's this special little formula that you have to figure out in order to go to that school. I made a choice to put my daughter in the school because it had a culture of high expectation. And the funny thing about it all is, I left the school building that was probably at the time, maybe 5 years old, brand spanking new building, had about 30 or so brand new, maybe about 20-inch Mac screens at the time. I mean, just loaded, bursting with technology. But the school was failing kids. So we made a choice to leave the brand new shiny school and move into one of the oldest buildings in the city of Atlanta, named after Joel Chandler Harris. Probably some of y'all read his book when you were kids. We moved into an old building in a not so stellar part of town, and people came from all over because that school opened its arms to whoever wanted to come there that bought into the vision. Bought into the vision, we're going to do things differently, we're going to set high expectations, we're going to hold the kids accountable. Both of my daughters have schools that have populations that are slightly above average when it comes to free and reduced lunch kids. That just happens to be that way. My wife and I, we chose to send our kids where they could be educated the way we want them to be educated. We didn't really care how much money the parents and the other parents may make or whether the kid may live. For us, when we walk in the door and we wear our uniforms and we have our crest on our chest, it's about that family and what that family of students is going to do to make life better for their future. And I just really wish that we could stick to the argument of doing what's best for kids and not politicking and trying to twist the argument around in the minds of parents.
I want to share with you some academic evidence and studies. It actually has an emotional kick. And the saddest thing about all of that is when you take us a little school that could, and put it in a situation like that, what do you think actually happens to all the surrounding regular public schools? They all get better. And all academic studies show this. The charter school movement is sweeping the country because of this very fact. You take an exciting, energetic, parents, kids, faculty, you plunk it in the middle of an environment that's failing, and all of a sudden everybody else starts getting excited. So this one little school that's running at 30 to 40% less cost than the existing schools is doing better than the existing schools, and it also manages, by example, to pull up all the other schools. And this, again, is across the country. We know that this happens. And if you think about it, it shouldn't surprise you. It would be the natural thing that would happen.
Free market forces at work.
Tony, I know you got a comment. Let me throw this in there and you can answer that as well. Sure. Because one of the questions was what happens to the kids that don't get selected to go to charter school that are left behind? It sounds like maybe they're going to benefit as well.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was going to address. Rich had a very good situation in that there were open seats in the charter school. How many of you have seen the movie Won't Back Down? If you haven't, it's a great movie because it really tells you how it is in the United States. If your children are not doing well, in the traditional public school and you don't have the money for a private school, what do? Well, in the movie, the lady tried to get her daughter in a charter school. If you remember, though, there are just so many seats in the charter school. So how did they choose the students? That's the law. The way they chose the students in that movie is the law. You have to have a lottery. If there are more kids than seats, you have a lottery. And I've been in schools where these lotteries have been conducted, and when the kids come in to put their names in the pot, there are no identifiers. In other words, they don't know what race they are, they don't know what their grades were, they don't know anything. So it's totally a blind lottery until someone pulls out that number and says, oh, that's 35, and then someone over here says, oh, 35, that's June Allen, you know. So it's very sad that this little girl wasn't chosen. So they tried to do something that's called a parent trigger. That's a different story. But here, it's really sad. We've got a waiting list of 5,000 kids just for our state so-called special charter schools that are in question here. These are people whose parent really wants something better for their children, but they can't get in the charter school because there are no seats, no room available. Is that the question you were asking, or are you asking?
Well, part of it was what happens to the kids that don't get selected and left behind? Are they just left in poor performing schools? But what the professor was saying, it sounds like that has actually helped improve the education in those public schools.
It does, and it's a long-term process. It's the reason, people that are opposing charter schools will say, well, if you can't improve education for every single child, then you shouldn't do it. Why just help that little group of children? But what they're not thinking is the influence. I think I can go back to your analogy now. If McDonald's notices all their customers are going to Burger King, they're going to say, what's wrong with our hamburgers? Why is no one buying our hamburgers anymore? Why are they going over there? And this is happening in other states. Now, a lot of other states have a lot more charter schools than we do. And they've had them a lot longer. And what they've seen is exactly what Dr. Reeves has said. It raises the bar. Because as schools see, hey, our parents are not happy. Children are leaving. What do we need to do? Then they do a self-study. And then they do a strategic plan. And they decide, what can we do to have a better school? And sometimes that's what motivates them to become a conversion charter school. Sometimes that's what makes them have a charter system. And this is really an ironic thing to me, that there are a lot of people in charter systems that are against the charter amendment. Who would have thunk it? You would think, oh, they love charter school. No, they don't. But they owe their existence to the little mom and pop charter school that could. And they saw how those schools were operating. They said, man, there's something to this. We need to try to improve our schools in the same way. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm not against the charter system. I think that's wonderful. I just think it's funny that they don't really want more charter schools.
And Senator, forgive me, but I always end up answering things kind of personally, but that's just how this whole process is for me. When my daughter attended a traditional public school, there was about 22 kids that were in her fourth grade class before she went her fifth grade year to our public charter school. So there was 22 kids in that class, and they received at that time in the neighborhood of about $14,000 per pupil in the Atlanta public school system. So she had 22 kids. They were getting somewhere between $14,000, a little bit over $14,000 at that particular time at her public school. She left that class, went to a public charter school where we actually had 30 kids per class. Her first year, there was 90 students that started KIPP Scribe Academy. They started with 90 students in 3 classes. That's 30 kids per class. Now, I call them the educrats, the folks who are supposed to be really, really good at education. They've said time and time again that if you have a smaller classroom, you've got to get better results. Now, here's an example. Well, my daughter leaving that traditional school made the classroom smaller, assuming nobody else came, okay? So let's just go with that assumption. Assuming no one else came, the class got smaller. So it's less responsibility on the teacher. She could have more time to focus on some other kids who may be a little bit more needed. I find it hard for people to make this crazy argument that somehow the kids that are left behind are going to be left behind. using what they have said time and time again. This is the opposition. Using the same that they've said time and time again, it actually begins to work in their favor. You get a smaller class, and you get more money. So if you break it down, it should be a win-win scenario for everyone. Now, I will tell you this. Their facts are a little flawed, because it's been proven time and time again that class size really doesn't matter a whole lot. It's about having a quality teacher, setting high standards. That's my case for why the kids who are still in the charter school, still in traditional school, they're going to be just as fine or better off because of a reallocation of resources. If adults do the right thing in the best interest of the kids, those kids are going to have more time from their teacher, and they're going to have more excess dollars that can be invested in them to do additional services.
Representative Coomer,
And
you
in
have-
Atlanta, that number is $4,321. That's how much they were better off than your daughter's out.
you had a comment, and then I want to transition to the next question after this.
Right, I just wanted to follow up on this idea of other schools in the community improving when state charter commission schools come in, because if you take that out a step further to a macro level, what happens is community schools get better, the system schools get better, and then we reach ultimately what is our goal as state legislators, the state's reputation, performance, system gets better. That's important not just for the educational opportunities of those children, but for the economic opportunities of those children and their families and the state, because when companies look to expand or they look to invest in a certain place, they want to build a plant somewhere, they're not the first thing they're going to do. One of the things they're going to do is figure out what the education is like in that location. They don't look at the beginning, they don't look at Rome City Schools and say, well, Rome City Schools are good, but maybe DeKalb County schools aren't good, so let's put our plant up in Rome and not down in DeKalb. What they look at instead is the 30,000-foot view. What do we know about Georgia education? Low scores, high dropout rates, cheating scandals, accreditation problems. Let's move on to, dare I say it, Alabama. Let's move on somewhere else that doesn't have those problems. So it is a real economic development issue. It's a branding issue, if you will. Better education across the state means better economic development, better competition in this state with our neighbors.
Senator Rogers, we've been